you can imagine. So you can imagine I was desperately tried everything, and nothing worked. Um, really didn't want to go into the medical route, so I just persisted, and it took a good 3 years to resolve it. So just this one particular day that I woke up in the morning, and it just this uh, little um, well, this thing, the little spots of where the psoriasis were on my face was just oozing out, and it was really horrible. And I felt I was really desperate at that point. And so I basically just, I said, right, I'm going to start the day and wash my face and just sat down quietly. And that was quite amazing, because suddenly it took me to this wonderful space, um, where I would say spontaneously tapped into some strange fields. Um, it's all golden field, and it was so much bliss there. It was just simply quite an amazing experience that I can recall it vividly even today, exactly what it felt like.
Do you have
And
any idea what that field was, or where that field existed kind of on this quantum realm? Was it microscopic? Was it kind of quantum energy? How do you see it?
I would say it was the Godfield and accessible to everyone.
And accessible. Okay, I see.
Absolutely, yes. So basically, it was just this golden sort of what I'll call virtual particles that just came and went. And yeah, and I found myself, well, like I said, I just found myself in this wonderful space of bliss. And all of a sudden, I noticed that everything was calming down. I didn't, everything was going. It was just, I was displaced in this space and couldn't feel any pain or anything, just joy. And, you know, literally sort of everything was calming down. And just prior to that, there were really all these psoriasis spots were oozing, and it was horrible. I felt horrible. But at this moment in time, it was just absolutely wonderful. And I do believe, that's well, that's the Higgs field or the God field. It's, Higgs actually found out that there was that place, that field. And
Higgs, Higgs, is that
that's right,
correct?
yes. And well, we've all started in that field.
Yeah.
You
Yes, that's right.
know it, we're familiar with it. I just, you know, our DNA has compromised us, and how it's expressed itself. And we've lost in touch with that. But it is accessible. And I know through this work, a lot of people have been able to get back there.
Yeah, we have a lot of stories from many years of big shifts, and this Higgs field. You said it's like an inner Higgs field. You called it a God field or a God source. What did you describe it as?
Yes, it's the, well, Godfield.
God field.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is what Higgs discovered.
interesting. When you look at this God field, and I know you connect to this as you work with people in many ways, and we're going to do that today. You also, in that, is perhaps DNA, or does DNA come from the God field in its purest form and then get changed? How does DNA and this God field maybe interact or interface?
Well, we've got the DNA in our genetics. That's through conception. We get the DNA from both our parents.
Yeah.
And that stays with us, well, forever. But that's fine. Thing is, it's only of value in terms of sort of certain aspects of our being, in terms of, for example, blonde hair, blue eyes, whatever. And but it's and the thing is, the effect that, I mean, that has, it's only about 2%, well, 2.1% to be precise, that when they did the genome project, that's what they found out, that only that was active. The rest, 90 97.1.3 was actually junk DNA. And that was during the first genome project. That's what they found out. But later on, they went back on that project and they found that there were, this junk email was like files, a whole library of files. And this is with the messenger RNAs being expressed through all those files. Right, but coming back to sort of the DNA, it's so that's the genes. The main thing is it's not our genes, but it's beyond the genes, so that's above the genes. It's how this is expressed in our in our in our in our bodies, and so it's everything outside our DNA. That's the issue. And of course, then we can tie in sort of, this is where the toroidal fields, or the torus, I've done an MP3 on that. That's basically, if we've got a toroidal field around our DNA, and then another toroidal field around our cells, and literally every cell in our body, then our bodies, and beyond that, outside our bodies. And then going up, the sun, moon, all the planets, right at the universe. So, and these toroidal fields communicate all the time with the outside world. And this is the key thing, is that communication, because, and just showing that we're all interconnected. And of course, this DNA, epigenetics, and was coined by Bruce Lipton, who was working on stem cells. And basically what happened, what he did was, he was looking at the cell, pulled out all the, the nucleus, and he was surprised that the cell wasn't falling apart. And then he kept pulling out other components. And as he carried on, when he actually removed the cell membrane, then the cell fell apart. And that's quite fun. So it's everything. So basically our cells are communicating with everything that's outside. And of course, there's a whole factory of things going on in the inside of the cells. But this, in terms of epigenetics, and how then it's then that our genes express. Yes. So you get the genes, say maybe from your mother, and then it's expressed through our DNA, depending on what triggers. It could be, since we're talking about the DNA, the telomeres, is the little caps on the ends of the DNA that make sure that it's like the shoelaces, they've got this little cap. And that's to ensure that when the DNA, and the folding and the expression is happening, that nothing leaks out. So that's the purpose of that. But of course, then when we are in very stressed situations, especially telomeres, as scientists who've actually discovered this, found that people who are looking after, caring for people, carers basically, but in very difficult situations, and that high percentage of stress, it's what caused the caps to break down. And of course, with the telomere, caps breaking down, we start aging, get diseased. It's so important to maintain this. And the good thing is, once upon a time, they thought that that's it. We couldn't do this thing, but there's so many tools and strategies that you can take to bring them back into good working order, to renew that, and stop the aging process as well.
Yeah, I love this. And I want to get to, I was showing folks something here, might help them understand a couple things. The first thing was just kind of the idea of the toroidal field. It's like a big donut, right? In this picture. I never, we have a toroidal field around us. A lot of people believe the heart forms a toroidal field, of course, in its energy spectrum and its natural way of operating efficiently as an energy, transmitter. But I did not realize we had toroidal fields around the DNA and toroidal fields around that. So we're going to dive into this. And the telomeres, yes, 100% as the telomeres shorten over time. You can see this, the ends. It's kind of like the ends of a shoelace. When you get a brand new pair of shoes, they have that nice little plastic around the ends of the shoelace. Then as that starts to wear away, the shoelaces fall apart because they got unraveled and they shorten over time. So these are all absolutely some of the cutting edge things in genetics and epigenetics. As you look at the energies, how do you see ancestral trauma and inherited beliefs affecting DNA? What are you seeing as energy and medical intuitive? How do you see that affecting the DNA?
Oh, that's a good question, because this is, it's a huge thing with ancestral trauma. And again, when you see this concept with the toroidal field, how that multidimensional and everything connecting to the outside, etc. So everything's with the toroidal field. How much information comes across and how we can be affected. And of course, by the toroidal field is trying to keep us from attracting those. But when, our bodies start being, traumatized. So basically, going back to your question, ancestral trauma. So basically, this traumas, inherited beliefs, basically keep us stuck. Okay. And, so we need to clear them. So these are the emotional wounds from past generations. And of course, this is what can start a gene to express itself in the wrong way.
Okay.
And be passed down from generations to generations. And I'm going to give you a very good example that I had working with this client, Deirdre. When she was 3 years old, she was in a room next, joining another room, and her mother came out through this door. Totally, she was in grief, and Deirdre, just as a little girl, just absorbed that and the trauma. What had happened, her mother walked through that doorway, and she just experienced that her little infant had actually died in that room. And so you can imagine how devastated the mother was. And of course, poor Deirdre, at 3 years old, she clearly, sort of reacted to this. And it was interesting because I was doing a process with her, and she reacted very strongly to the word doorway. And I couldn't understand why it was so strong. But anyway, she recalled at that moment how when she was, or rather when the next sibling was born, a little sister was born, her mother again came out of that room with the infant and handed it to her, saying, "This is yours." And she, well, instinctively and, right, this is it, took on the responsibility of trying to keep that baby alive. So that's, sort of 2 years later, or a year later, I can't remember. But you can imagine, so that was such a huge responsibility for a little child. And with this, of course, she was feeling very alone. And of course, through this, the pattern of that ancestral DNA, which I found out later, emerged. So as a child, she obviously developed coping mechanisms, as we all do. But as an adult, of course, these don't work. So later on in adulthood, she was diagnosed with Morgellons disease. And I don't know how many of you know this, but this basically is an alien disease. It doesn't come from our planet, but it's pretty horrible because it's
Heard of
basically
it. Yeah, I've heard of it. I didn't know what it
so
is.
different colors, fibers, and all come through your skin, and yeah, it's very painful. But the worst thing is, it's contagious, highly contagious. So you can imagine with her, she was immediately separated from her loved ones and heartbreakingly from her grandchildren because she just couldn't see them or be with them because, fear of passing this on to them. So it was interesting with the doorways. So basically, when I worked on that, I found that there was a trauma, and that trauma basically it revealed an ancestral pattern of infant loss, and basically was able to trace this right to the potato blight in Ireland, and that's when, obviously, through the potato blight, still, families lost a lot of children, and parents died as well.
And this was the same lady that when she was a girl, her mother walked out of the room losing the baby. So this activated something that was in the DNA.
That's right.
Then years later activated or allowed something like Morgellons to hold, open the door, lowered immunity, or whatever.
Absolutely. That was the most interesting thing because
Yeah.
that doorway, the portal. Now, the Morgellons, it also allowed a portal to the extraterrestrials because
You're saying this is it's Jo, sorry to interrupt, but for people who don't, you're saying this is a disease. And I've heard of this before. We had maybe one other person that's talked about this literally in 10 years, 12 years. And so this is an alien disease from other life forms in the universe. Morgellons. Okay.
Morgellons, yes. Because I've had two other cases. So Deirdre was the third. So when I did look it up at the time, and I had come across an article saying, that it was not from our planet. And then, but it was interesting because when we did the process, she actually saw these aliens thanking her for handing, that back to them because it wasn't meant to be on our planet.
My gosh. My gosh. So what happened at the end of the day after you found all this out? Was she able to shift this?
Yes, pretty much. And basically, it's with that,
Yes.
released through all the generation, past and present, and future generations, obviously.
Wow. We're going to talk more about this and a lot more. As I said, Jo works in some very interesting ways. Morgellons is a disease characterized, controversial condition by strange fibers. It's a belief strange fibers are emerging from the skin, often associated with a form of illusional parasitosis, skin crawling, stinging, biting, perceived foreign material like fibers within or emerging from the skin. Of course, the medical community believes it's some sort of in your imagination, but for people feeling it, it's absolutely real. And it'd be interesting to me because it would seem like you had other dimensional sort of like aliens or life forms or energies, they would be doing something at the physical level that maybe other people couldn't see, but it's happening at like another level of consciousness that you're feeling this attack. So that's like a real terrible, terrible situation. All right. Well, I want to talk about some of the things you've seen as solutions because I know you've had a lot of stories, and one of the things that you've been tapping into is this um, God cell, this God cell DNA. What is that, Jo? And then we're going to talk about some of the ways that you've been shifting this as well. What is the God cell DNA?
Basically, the God cell is we've actually all of us have got one God cell in in a behind.
Thank God that we have one God cell. That's good.
Yeah,
I don't want
and
anyone to manipulate that.
and that's to remind us that where we've come from,
That's right.
and we've always got that blueprint, so that that will be enough for us for all ourselves to come to that frequency, and that's such an important aspect of our being.
Yes,
That
that's right.
so, and we can renew our blueprint. It's just knowing how to do it.
To do it. We're going to talk more about that. What is the energy of Kali? What is the significance of that?
Sorry, sorry,
Kali, Kali. I don't know if I'm even saying
sorry,
it correct.
Goddess Kelly. Yes, so
Yeah, because I told people I'd never heard of Goddess Kali. I'd never heard of this, so I could be wrong. Goddess Kali. Tell me about what you're doing with that energy.
yes, she represents. Well, she's this goddess of Indian descent, and the color of her skin is midnight blue. So it's really dark, and but she represents the dark forces and the transformation of dark forces to really burn everything, and everything, all the constructs that we have on our planet is something that Kelly can transform. Just but I mean, she's uh, how she's represented in she's got literally snakes on her hair in her hair, and then uh, a necklace with um, hands and feet of human. She's actually stepping on her husband, Lord Shiva. She's got a sword in one hand, and so it's really a frightening picture. But that's it. But basically, she brings everything, and everything about us is all the constraints start from fear, and fear can be anger, it can be so many things, everything, and that moving on to love, and that's what she does, moves everybody out of fear into love. And we're going to do a process on actually on anger, which is one of
Sure.
the fear constructs.
So you've been using, I know the God cell and also Kali, Mother Kali, to shift this energy for a lot of people. Is it a kind of detoxification? Because I know that one of the things you mentioned is physical, emotional, and energetic detoxification being very important. Is that what she's doing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
And this is basically it. To see all the low constructs makes us ill, and and of course with the DNA we've got the environmental factor as well. So that could be anything, our food, environment, the electromagnetic fields, um, light, even the wrong sort of light, wrong sort of water, everything. And but everything is um, at the end of the day is to do with our beliefs. What do we believe, and through those beliefs, what do we attract from our environment, etc.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You use a lot of different tools. We're going to dive in with some callers today. So if you've been wanting some support from Jo, go ahead and raise your hand because we want to help you. We can kind of work with some of the things you may be going through, maybe shift it a little bit, or Jo can give you an idea of what she is seeing in sort of the field, what is affecting you. And as a promise today, I want to get to that a little earlier. So I want to help everyone. I want this to be just a huge, big giving call. But I gotta ask, when you look at the bodies and you look inside of maybe these strange fields, what these virtual particles are, what's originating from that God self, what are you seeing most often in all your clients? I know I've got pages and pages of different things that have been happening for folks, things like painful swelling due to infection, debilitating anxiety, gone. My legs started soul healing of psoriasis immediately after a second session. Again, I'm going to say everyone's different, so I got to be careful with FTC. I'm not saying this is a cure, but we're shifting the energy from the soul level, and something that is at the soul level is projecting into the body some imbalance, and then this starts to resolve. Another person, 40 years of something was gone in a session. I'm not going to repeat what it is. I don't want to get in trouble. But these are the kind of things. Within an hour, I felt lighter. My posture was better. Discomfort almost gone. Painful shoulder. Hadn't slept in a while. It's gone. Felt like it was moving into the fifth dimension. So what are you seeing when you see these kind of things shift? What are you seeing a lot of times in people beforehand?
Basically the imbalances, basically, when I scan them, I see all the areas where, well,
Yeah.
the areas that are in balance usually appear, as golden, and the
Oh,
others appear as, gray areas.
oh,
But I'll just talk about that one client you
please. Yeah.
mentioned initially, HS, and basically what was happening, she was the one with the skin, the bad psoriasis, and I can relate to that in terms of
Yeah.
how awful that was for me. So I really, sympathize with her for that. And what working on her, basically, I found that uh, basically her DNA was combined. So this was her environment. And what happened started off when she was very little. Her mother literally, again, this is another one where she imparted a lot of responsibility on her. And she continued that. And then consequently, everyone in the family started doing that. So she could imagine she was just bombarded with all these energies and requests from people, from the family and others. Um, and it sort of stressed her out so much. Um, and of course, this affected her skin. Um, and of course, the skin is a boundary. That's the first line
Yes.
of defense.
Yes.
So, and this is, like I said, from childhood, this started the epigenetics from her childhood.
Yes.
And um, basically, well, she had, she described as insatiable, itchy skin, swelling from infections, and of course, consequently, anxiety. But the anxiety was really high for it, for whole body to react this way. So basically, here it was dealing with the epigenetics and clearing all that, and bring her into the space where it shifted her mindset,
Yes.
from suffering, struggle to joy, and healing. And of course, then this, if you can imagine, I just actually saw the signals going through the whole body. Um, and of course, by going through a body, it boosts the immune system function, and also, which is the psoriasis and immune system thing, and also the infection, obviously, and reducing the inflammation. And I mean, she basically at the end of it just said, she couldn't believe how clear her skin is. She just had one tiny scar, which soon, went away. And I can
Uh,
imagine the amount of stress. Yeah, this and I spoke about the telomeres.
yes.
So this is a
Yes.
good example of how the telomeres were breaking down.
Yeah, I don't fully understand. I try to understand sometimes how uh, you know, intuitives and soul healers work. I still don't understand what you see and how it works, but I can tell you, she said, sorry to be graphic, quote unquote, from HS, to emphasize how bad it really was. It is all gone. It's hard to imagine my skin ever being restored, but now there's only the little scar which is fading. So she just absolutely could not believe it. And here's the thing I want to say, however we are feeling an imbalance, we don't know where things are going to shift. So we just it's kind of like we want to let in the balanced energy, bringing us back to that divine perfection, and allow whatever it is that will shift. We just don't know, but it's better to be in the light, in the place of this renewal, than in the decline. And so I hope that for everybody. Now I'm going to make a note real quick. We're going to go and take some questions. I'm going to stop the live stream. If you're listening in or you're hearing this on one of the other sites, join at our community. That's where you can get the one-on-one help. You can raise your hand. You're going to get the energy process coming up, and you're going to get maybe even a chance to work with Jo herself, which is extremely, extremely powerful.